All right, so here we are with another video on the Lunar Mansion series, the Lunar Station series for all you Western people, or for Vedic people, it would be known as the Nakshatra system in Western and Vedic astrology. So, if you haven't seen the initial videos on this channel, just a brief refresher as to what lunar mansions are, what they do. So basically, the moon moves in a 27-day orbit from our perspective around us, and each day of this orbit, the moon moves 13 and a third, or 13.2 out of 6 degrees. And over the course of 27 days, the moon will go back to where it was. So, with that being said, there are things known as co-rulers in astrology, whereby, for instance, most people know that the sign of Scorpio, Aquarius, and Pisces have, one or two co-rulers depending on the system you're using. In the system that I prefer to use, Scorpio has two co-rulers, which are the south node of the moon, or the descending node, and Pluto, as well as the main ruler Mars. And likewise, Aquarius has two co-rulers, which are the north node of the moon, or the ascending node in some Western systems, or Rahu in the Vedic system, and Uranus, as well as the main ruler, which is Saturn. And Neptune, or Pisces, has the co-ruler of Neptune as well as its main ruler, Jupiter. So, with that being said, each of the lunar stations, which again are 13 and a third, or 13.2 out of 6 degrees in length, have their own co-ruler. And they're on a 27-degree cycle. There are 3 different co-rulers that each lunar mansion or nakshatra can have, and that cycle of 9 co-rulers repeats 3 times, making ultimately 27 lunar mansions, with a potential of 1 out of 9 co-rulers. So, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the 4th lunar mansion, and it's in the sign of Taurus. It goes from 10 degrees Taurus to 23 and a third degrees Taurus, so it's all in Taurus. It doesn't skip across any signs, or you don't have to deal with 2 separate main rulers like we did in the last one, which starts in the last little bit of Aries and goes into Taurus. And as I said in my previous videos, each lunar mansion has a when you put the 2 co-rulers together, there's a method that's complicated. I don't have time to get into it now, but there's a method of when you combine these 2 co-rulers, you get another sort of summed co-ruler. And if you remember for the last one, it was Saturn primarily for the Kritika Nakshatra, or the 3rd lunar mansion, which starts in Aries and goes to Taurus. For this one, that starts in 10 degrees Taurus and goes to 23 and a third degrees Taurus, the sort of summed co-ruler is Venus, and the nakshatra or lunar station co-ruler is the moon. So, with that being said, this nakshatra or lunar mansion has an extremely stable energy, which you would expect from Taurus, but Venus being the sort of summed co-ruler of this, and Moon valuing security and stability, ruling the sign of Cancer, the 4th house, the midnight house of the zodiac, you've got a person who enjoys their material things, and also, dude, fuck this. Hold on, siren. All right, now that that's over with, anyway, so you've got a person who values their material possessions, and who alternatively and simultaneously enjoys the emotional memorabilia of these material possessions. So the main issue with the sign of Taurus, which rules over your sort of material pleasures, is that material pleasures don't always make you happy. They're just arousing to your senses. Now, when you put the moon as a co-ruler from 10 degrees to 23 and a third degrees Taurus, you get a person who not only enjoys their material stability and success, but also finds emotional happiness and security in the material pleasure. So Venus is pleasure and Moon is love, which is why, if you remember my video in the Taurus Ascendant and Taurus Sun videos specifically, and also in the Cancer Ascendant and Cancer Sun videos, I've said that the sign of Cancer is kind of like a higher self of Taurus, because Taurus is the second sign of the zodiac and Cancer is 2 signs from Taurus. So if you think about the fact that Taurus is material pleasures and Cancer is happiness, the end result of attaining your material pleasures is happiness. So you put these 2 signs together and you get an emotional, successful person. So this is considered one of the most successful nakshatras that you can have. Specifically, if your Moon's here, this is very good for you. Sun, even North Node of the Moon, although that's a very immoral energy. If you put the North Node of the Moon here, these people can be very organized and driven to achieve success. Same with Mercury. Even Saturn here, Saturn will give delayed success, but it will give success, because Saturn always gives the things it delays, unless there's some rare reason it shouldn't, but I'll get into that later. So basically these people's, obviously I'm not going to say that every person with a lot of these placements, or even like a good main planet in this placement, is going to be successful, because you have to look at the entire chart. For instance, if the South Node is here along with a planet, this person may feel like they've already achieved this sort of stereotypical financial and emotional success, and there's no need to really strive for it because they already understand it. But by and large, if you have good planets in this placement, you can really, especially the Moon. So an interesting fact about this placement and related to success is that when you have the Moon here in this middle part of Taurus that I previously described its boundaries, most people know who are into astrology that the Moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus and debilitated in the sign of Scorpio. But each sign of exaltation also has an exalted nakshatra. And this being the Moon's own nakshatra or lunar mansion, in its exalted sign, it ultimately will further exalt the Moon if the Moon is here, rather than in the last nakshatra we discussed, or in the next one that we're going to discuss, which goes into Gemini a little bit and is ruled by Mars. So, in the same way that the first Venus nakshatra, the second lunar mansion that we discussed, is associated with death and has sort of a Plutonic, Hades, Kali-like vibe, this nakshatra is very, very oriented on the opposite of that, of affirming life, affirming materialism, affirming success, affirming happiness. So all in all, this is probably the least selfish placement of Taurus, the least materialistic, and while they are still materialistic, these people tend to also value happiness, and they will often and mostly find a balance between their emotional happiness and their, financial stability. Now, there are some downsides to this nakshatra. In order to, like with all moon placements, in order to teach one how to manage their emotions, these people may deal with depression in their early lives. However, there's not really much need to fear here, because that dealing with depression will ultimately teach you how to manage depression, versus some people might go through depression and just stay there because they're supposed to get a different lesson out of it. But these people learn to manage their emotions and ultimately prioritize their own happiness. So that is something to look out for with this nakshatra. You can definitely have issues with depression with multiple placements here, because the moon is basically trying to teach you to voluntarily moderate your own depression. So that is a lesson to be aware of. And obviously, with all Taurus placements, you're going to put a priority on work that constrain your time, so you're going to want to look at Saturn and Mercury's placements to see how the other Earth signs and Earth planets in your chart are going to work out. But this being said, by and large, this is a very optimistic nakshatra. So, that concludes this video, and the next lunar mansion video we're going to do will be Mriksara, or the 5th lunar mansion, and it's going to go from Taurus into Gemini, the Taurus-Gemini cusp, if you will, and it's going to be ruled by Mars. So, if you have that nakshatra, tune in next time, and I will cover it for you. Thanks.